Women have faced execution throughout history, each carrying a story of tragedy, cruelty, or injustice. A grandmother who poisoned her loved ones. A woman whose last words were lost in electric jolts. A mother condemned for a crime she may not have committed. And a drifter who claimed self-defense only to be cast as one of history's most infamous offenders. Were they all guilty? Or were some sacrificed to the system? Let's uncover the chilling truth behind the women the US chose to execute. Bonnie Emily Heady, Missouri. On December 18, 1953, Bonnie Emily Heady, 41, was executed at the Missouri State Penitentiary in Jefferson City. Her execution marked the end of a case that left an entire nation horrified. Heady and her accomplice, Carl Hall, were convicted of the kidnapping and murder of 6-year-old Bobby Greenlease. On September 28, 1953, Heady walked into Notre Dame de Sion, a private Catholic school in Kansas City, Missouri. She posed as Bobby's aunt, telling school officials that his mother had suffered a heart attack and that she was sent to pick him up. Trusting her, the school released Bobby into her care, a decision they would regret for the rest of their lives. Heady then met up with Hall, and together they drove Bobby across state lines to Johnson County, Kansas. Shortly after, Hall pulled out a .38 caliber revolver and shot Bobby in the head, ending his life. They then buried his small body in the backyard of Heady's home in St. Joseph, Missouri. Despite already killing Bobby, Hall and Heady sent ransom demands to his parents, asking for $600,000, the largest ransom in US history at that time. Desperate for their son's safe return, the Greenlease family paid the ransom, unaware that their child was already gone. Hall and Heady took the money and fled to St. Louis, but their reckless spending and drinking drew suspicion. A cab driver, noticing their unusual behavior, tipped off the police. They were arrested shortly after, and both confessed to the crime. Their trial was swift. On October 30th, 1953, Hall and Heady pleaded guilty to kidnapping and murder in federal court. After just over an hour of deliberation, the jury sentenced them both to death. On December 18th, 1953, Heady and Hall were executed side by side in Missouri's gas chamber. Heady's last meal was fried chicken. As the cyanide gas filled the chamber, her final words to Hall were, "Are you doing all right, honey?" To which Hall replied, "Yes, Mama." Moments later, both were dead. Bonnie Emily Heady's execution closed a painful chapter in one of the most infamous kidnapping cases in American history. But for Bobby Greenlease's family, there was no justice, only loss. Ethel Rosenberg, New York. On June 19, 1953, Ethel Rosenberg, 37, was executed at Sing Sing Prison in Ossining, New York. Her death, alongside her husband Julius Rosenberg, remains one of the most controversial executions in US history, fueled by Cold War paranoia and fears of Soviet espionage. Ethel and Julius were convicted of conspiring to pass atomic secrets to the Soviet Union during and after World War II. The key testimony against her came from her own brother, David Greenglass, who claimed that Ethel typed classified notes that were later given to Soviet operatives. The Rosenbergs' trial began on March 6, 1951 in New York. Prosecutors painted them as traitors who had endangered national security, while their defense argued there was no concrete evidence proving Ethel's direct involvement. On March 29, 1951, both were found guilty. A week later, on April 5th, they were sentenced to death under the Espionage Act of 1917. Over the next 2 years, their case sparked international outrage. Prominent figures, including Albert Einstein and the Pope, pleaded for clemency, arguing that the evidence against Ethel was weak. Despite multiple appeals, President Dwight D. Eisenhower refused to intervene, believing their actions had compromised US security. On the evening of June 19, 1953, Julius Rosenberg was executed first in the electric chair. Minutes later, Ethel was led to the chamber. Witnesses reported that it took multiple jolts of electricity before she was pronounced dead, a gruesome and drawn-out execution that shocked even those who supported her sentence. Ethel Rosenberg's execution remains one of the most debated in American history. While some argue she was a willing participant, others believe she was wrongfully convicted, punished more for refusing to betray her husband than for actual espionage. Years later, declassified documents cast further doubt on the severity of her role, leaving her legacy entangled in uncertainty. Amber McLaughlin, Missouri. On January 3, 2023, Amber McLaughlin, 49, was executed by lethal injection at the Eastern Reception, Diagnostic and Correctional Center in Bonne Terre, Missouri. She became the first openly transgender person to be executed in the United States. McLaughlin was convicted for the murder of her ex-girlfriend, Beverly Gwenther, on November 20, 2003, in St. Louis County, Missouri. Their relationship had ended months before the crime, but McLaughlin was unable to move on, repeatedly stalking Gwenther and violating a restraining order. On the day of the murder, McLaughlin ambushed Gwenther outside her workplace, where she sexually assaulted and fatally stabbed her. Gwenther's body was found later that day, and McLaughlin was arrested shortly after. At trial, McLaughlin was convicted of first-degree murder, forcible rape, and armed criminal action. In 2006, she was sentenced to death by a judge's ruling after a divided jury could not unanimously agree on the sentencing. In the years leading up to her execution, McLaughlin's legal team sought to prevent the execution, highlighting her difficult upbringing, struggles with mental illness, and the trauma she endured. However, despite multiple appeals and clemency requests, Governor Mike Parson did not intervene. On the day of her execution, Amber McLaughlin declined a special last meal, requesting only a cup of coffee. Her final words were, "I am sorry for what I did. I am a loving and caring person." At 6:51 p.m. Central Standard Time, Amber McLaughlin was pronounced dead. Velma Barfield, North Carolina. On November 2, 1984, Velma Barfield, 52, was executed at Central Prison in Raleigh, North Carolina. She became the first woman executed in the US since 1962 and the first to die by lethal injection. Barfield was convicted of murdering her fiancé, Stuart Taylor, in 1978 by poisoning his drinks with arsenic. But Taylor wasn't her only victim. Investigators soon uncovered a pattern. Several people close to her had died under suspicious circumstances, including her mother, 2 elderly patients, and her second husband, Jennings Barfield. In 1978, Stuart Taylor fell suddenly ill after drinking coffee prepared by Velma. He died soon after. An autopsy revealed lethal levels of arsenic, leading to Velma's arrest. Under questioning, she confessed, admitting to multiple poisonings but claiming she never intended to kill, only to make them ill. At trial, Velma's defense argued that her drug addiction influenced her actions, but the jury saw her as a calculated serial offender. On December 1978, she was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. While on death row, Velma became a devout Christian. Her transformation gained public attention, with supporters petitioning for clemency. Despite multiple appeals, North Carolina Governor Jim Hunt denied her final request. On the evening of November 2, 1984, Velma declined a formal last meal, instead eating cheese doodles and drinking a Coca-Cola. She was strapped to the gurney as the lethal injection was administered. Minutes before her execution, she addressed the victim's family saying, "I want to say that I'm sorry for all the hurt I've caused." At 2:15 a.m., Velma Barfield was pronounced dead. Christina Riggs, Arkansas. On May 2, 2000, Christina Marie Riggs, 28, was executed by lethal injection at the Cummins Unit in Lincoln County, Arkansas. She became the first woman executed in Arkansas since 1845 and the 5th woman executed in the US since 1976. Riggs was convicted for the murders of her 2 young children. Justin Dalton Thomas, 5, and Shelby Alexis Riggs, 2. On November 4th, 1997, Riggs, a licensed practical nurse, sedated her children with amitriptyline and then administered a lethal dose of potassium chloride to Justin. When that did not result in death, she smothered both children, ending their lives. At her trial, Riggs pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, citing struggles with severe depression and post-traumatic stress disorder from her nursing experience, including exposure to the Oklahoma City bombing. Despite this, the jury found her guilty of 2 counts of capital murder and sentenced her to death. Riggs waived her appeals, expressing a desire to be executed. On May 2, 2000, Riggs was executed by lethal injection. For her final meal, Riggs set her sights high, requesting a supreme pizza, a salad, fried okra, cherry limeade, and a strawberry shortcake for dessert. Her final words were, "No way can I make up for or take away the pain I've caused everyone who knew and loved them. I hope someday maybe everyone can forgive me. Now, I can be with my babies, as I always intended." At 9:28 p.m. CDT, Riggs was pronounced dead, closing a tragic chapter in the state's history. If you've stayed with us until the end, thank you for watching. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on more stories like these. Thank you for watching.